Morning, welcome to Colin's Reading Aloud Project Day 70, another 1,000 words, starting now. Dawn, dawned, dawner, dawned, dawnering, dawners, dawny, dawning, dawnings, dawn-like, dawns, doors, dawsonite, dawsonites. Daught, daughted, daughty, daughties, daughting, daughts, day, dayan, dayanim, dayans, daybed, daybeds, dayboat, dayboats, daybook, daybooks, dayboy, dayboys, daybreak, daybreaks, daycare, daycares, daycation, daycations, daycenter, daycenters, datech, datched, dateches, dateching, daydream, daydreamed, daydreamer, daydreamers, daydreaming, daydreamings, daydreamlike, daydreams, daydreamt, daydreamy, dayflies, dayflower, dayflowers, dayfly, daygirl, daygirls, dayglow, dayglow, dayglows, daylight, daylighted, daylighting, daylightings, daylights, daylilies, daylily, daylit, daylong, daymare, daymares, daymark, daymarks, daint, daints, daypack, daypacks, dayroom, dayrooms, days, daysack, daysacks, daysail, daysailed, daysailor, daysailers, daysailing, daysailor, daysailers, daysails, dayshell, dayshells, dayside, daysides, daysman, daysmen, dayspring, daysprings, daystar, daystars, daytail, daytailor, daytailors, daytails, daytime, daytimes, daywear, daywares, daywork, dayworker, dayworkers, dayworks, days, dazed, dazedly, dazedness, dazednesses, dazer, dazers, daisies, dazing, dazzle, dazzled, dazzlement, dazzlements, dazzler, dazzlers, dazzles, dazzling, dazzlingly, dazzlings, deacidification, deacidified, deacidifies, deacidifying, deacon, deaconed, deaconess, deaconesses, deaconhood, deaconhoods, deaconing, deaconries, deaconry, deacons, deaconship, deaconships, deactivate, deactivated, deactivates, deactivating, deactivation, deactivations, deactivator, deactivators, dead, deadbeats, deadbolt, deadbolts, dead boy, dead boys, deaded, deaden, deadened, deadener, deadeners, deadening, deadeningly, deadenings, deadens, deader, deaders, deadest, dead eye, dead eyes, deadfall, deadfalls, deadhead, deadheaded, deadheading, deadheads, deadhouse, deadhouses, deading, deadlier, deadliest, deadlift, deadlifted, deadlifting, deadlifts, deadlight, deadlights, deadline, deadlined, deadlines, deadliness, deadlinesses, deadlining, deadlock, deadlocked, deadlocking, deadlocks, deadly, dead man, dead men, deadness, deadnesses, deadpan, deadpanned, deadpanner, deadpanners, deadpanning, deadpans, deads, deadstock, deadstocks, deadstroke, deadweight, deadweights, deadwood, deadwoods, deaerate, deaerated, deaerates, deaerating, deaeration, deaerations, deaerator, deaerators, deaf, deafblind, deafen, deafened, deafening, deafeningly, deafenings, deafens, deafer, deafers, deafest, deafish, deafly, deafness, deafnesses, deair, deaired, deairing, deairs, deal, dealate, dealated, dealates, dealation, dealations, dealbate, dealbation, dealbations, dealbreaker, dealbreakers, dealer, dealership, dealers, dealership, dealerships, dealfish, dealfishes, dealign, dealigned, dealigning, dealines, dealing, dealings, dealmaker, dealmakers, deals, dealt, deambulatories, deambulatory, deaminase, deaminases, deaminate, deaminated, deaminates, deaminating, deamination, deaminations, deaminization, deaminizations, deaminize, deaminized, deaminizes, deaminizing, deaminization, deaminizations, deaminize, deaminized, deaminizes, deaminizing, dean, deaned, deaner, deaneries, deaners, deanery, deaning, deans, deanship, deanships, dear, dear bought, dear, deared, dearer, dears, dearest, dearests, dearie, dearies, dearing, dearling, dearlings, dearly, dern, derned, dearness, dearnesses, dernful, derning, dernly, derns, dears, dearth, dearths, dearticulate, dearticulated, dearticulates, dearticulating, deary, deash, deashed, deashes, deashing, desil, desills, deseal, deseals, desoil, desoils, deaspirate, deaspirated, deaspirates, deaspirating, deaspiration, deaspirations, death, deathbed, deathbeds, deathblow, deathblows, death care, death cup, death cups, deathful, deathier, deathiest, deathless, deathlessly, deathlessness, deathlessnesses, deathlier, deathliest, deathlike, deathliness, deathlinesses, deathly, deaths, deathsman, deathsmen, death trap, death traps, deathwood, deathwoods, deathwatch, deathwatches, deathy, deattribute, deattributed, deattributes, deattributing, deave, deaved, deaves, deaving, dior, diored, dewe, dewe, dioring, dees, diors, dewe, deb, debacle, debacles, debag, debagged, debagging, debaggings, debags, debar, debarcation, debarcations, debark, debarcation, debarcations, debarked, debarker, debarkers, debarking, debarks, debarment, debarments, debarrass, debarrassed, debarrasses, debarrassing, debarred, debarring, debars, debase, debased, debasedness, debasednesses, debasement, debasements, debaser, debasers, debases, debasing, debasingly, debatable, debatably, debate, debatable, debated, debateful, debatement, debatements, debater, debaters, debates, debating, debatingly, debatings, debauch, debauched, debauchedly, debauchedness, debauchednesses, debauchee, debauchees, debaucher, debaucheries, debauchers, debauchery, debauches, debauching, debauchment, debauchments, debier, debies, debiest, debbie, db, debeak, debeaked, debeaks, debeaking, debeaks, debeard, debearded, debearding, debeards, debel, debelled, debelling, debels, debenture, debenture, debentured, debentures, debs, debile, debilitate, debilitated, debilitates, debilitating, debilitation, debilitations, debilitative, debilities, debility, debit, debited, debiting, debitor, debitors, debits, debonair, debonair, debonairly, debonairness, debonairnesses, debone, deboned, deboner, deboners, debones, deboning, debonair, debosh, deboshed, deboshes, deboshing, deboss, debossed, debosses, debossing, debauch, debauch, debauched, debauches, debauching, debauchment, debauchments, debaucher, debauchers, debride, debrided, debridement, debridements, debrides, debriding, debrief, debriefed, debriefer, debriefers, debriefing, debriefings, debriefs, debris, debruise, debruised, debruises, debruising, debs, debt, debted, debtee, debtees, debtless, debtor, debtors, debts, debud, debudded, debudding, debuds, debug, debugged, debugger, debuggers, debugging, debuggings, debugs, debunk, debunked, debunker, debunkers, debunking, debunks, deburr, deburr, deburred, deburring, deburs, deburs, debus, debust, debusses, debussing, debust, debusses, debussing, debut, debutante, debutante, debutantes, debutantes, debuted, debuting, debuts, debuy, debuys, decachord, decachords, decad, decadal, decade, decadence, decadences, decadencies, decadency, decadent, decadently, decadence, decades, decads, decaf, decaf, decaffeinate, decaffeinated, decaffeinates, decaffeinating, decafs, decafs, decagon, decagonal, decagonally, decagons, decagram, decagram, decagrams, decagrams, decagynian, decagynous, decahedra, decahedral, decahedron, decahedrons, decal, decalcification, decalcified, decalcifier, decalcifiers, decalcifies, decalcify, decalcifying, decalcomania, decalcomanias, decaled, decalescence, decalescences, decalescent, decaling, decaliter, decaliters, decaliter, decaliters, decaled, decalled, decalling, decalogue, decologist, decologists, decalogues, decalogue, decalogues, decals, decameronic, decamerous, decameter, decameters, decamethonium, decamethoniums, decameter, decameters, decametric, decamp, decamped, decamping, decampment, decampments, decamps, decan, decanal, decanally, decandrian, decandrous, decane, decanedioic, that'll do, decanes, decany, decanically, decanoic, decans, decant, decantate, decantated, decantates, decantating, decantation, decantations, decanted, decanter, decanters, decanting, decants, decapitalize, decapitalized, decapitalizes, decapitalizing, decapitalize, decapitalized, decapitalizes, decapitalizing, decapitate, decapitated, decapitates, decapitating, decapitation, decapitations, decapitator, decapitators, decapod, decapodal, decapodan, decapodans, decapodus, decapods, decapsulate, decapsulated, decapsulates, decapsulating, decapsulation, decapsulations, decarb, decarbed, decarbing, decarbonate, decarbonated, decarbonates, decarbonating, decarbonation, decarbonations, decarbonator, decarbonators, decarbonisation, decarbonise, decarbonised, decarboniser, decarbonizers, decarbonizes, decarbonising, decarbonisation, decarbonise, decarbonised, decarboniser, decarbonisers, decarbonises, decarbonising, decarboxylase, decarboxylases, decarboxylate, decarboxylated, decarboxylates, decarboxylating, decarboxylation, decarbs, decarburation, decarburations, decarburization, decarburize, decarburized, decarburises, decarburizing, decarburization, decarburize, decarburized, decarburizes, decarburizing, decare, decares, decartelize, decartelized, decartelizes, decartelizing, decartelize, decartelized, decartelizes, decartelizing, decasteer, decasteers, decastick, decasticks, decastyle, decastyles, decasualization, decasualize, decasualized, decasualizes, decasualizing, decasualization, decasualize, decasualized, decasualizes, decasualizing, decasyllabic, decasyllabics, decasyllable, decasyllables, decathletes, decathletes, decathlon, decathlons, decordate, decordated, decordates, decordating, decay, decayable, decayed, decayer, decayers, decaying, decayless, decays, decky, deckies, deceased, deceased, deceasts, deceases, deceasing, decedent, decedents, deceit, deceitful, deceitfully, deceitfulness, deceitfulnesses, deceits, deceivabilities, deceivability, deceivable, deceivableness, deceivably, deceive, deceived, deceiver, deceivers, deceives, deceiving, deceivingly, deceivings, decelerate, decelerated, decelerates, decelerating, deceleration, decelerations, decelerator, decelerators, decelerometer, decelerometers, deceleron, decelerons, decemvir, decemviral, decemvirate, decemvirate, decemvirates, decemviry, decemviry, decemvirs, deceneries, decenary, decencies, decency, decennaries, decenary, decenia, decennial, decennially, decennials, decennium, decenniums, decenoval, decent, decenter, decentered, decenter, decentered, decentering, decenters, decentest, decently, decentness, decentnesses, decentralized, decentralized, decentralizes, decentralizing, decentralist, decentralists, decentralize, decentralized, decentralizes, decentralizing, decenter, decentered, decenters, decentering, deceptibilities, deceptibility, deceptible, deception, deceptional, deceptions, deceptious, deceptive, deceptively, deceptiveness, deceptivesses, deceptory, decerebrate, decerebrated, decerebrates, decerebrating, decerebration, decerebrations, decerebrize, decerebrized, decerebrizes, decerebrizing, decerebrize, decerebrized, decerebrizes, decerebrizing, discern, discerned, discerning, discerns, decertification, decertified, decertifies, decertify, decertifying, decession, decessions, decheance, decheances, declorinate, dechlorinated, dechlorinates, dechlorinating, declorination, dechlorinations, dechristianize, dechristianized, dechristianizes, dechristianized, dechristianized, dechristianizes, deciere, deciers, decibel, decibels, decidabilities, decidability, decidable, decide, decided, decidedly, decidedness, decidednesses, decider, deciders, decides, deciding, decidua, decidui, decidual, deciduous, deciduate, deciduous, deciduously, deciduousness, deciduousnesses, decigram, decigram, decigrams, decigrams, decile, deciles, deciliter, deciliters, deciliter, deciliters, decillion, decillions, decillianth, decillianths, decimal, decimalisation, and that's 1,000. Stopping there, and I'll see you tomorrow.